Welcome, traveler. You've arrived in the quiet hour, that space between waking and sleep, where stories still remember how to breathe. Tonight, we won't walk through forests or ruins. Tonight, we drift beneath the sea. There is a story from old Japan, whispered in fishing villages and carved into ancient scrolls. It is about kindness and time, and what happens when you accept an invitation from a creature who does not belong to your world. We'll follow a fisherman who vanished from the shore and returned to find that everything he knew was gone. As we begin, ask yourself, what other stories do you remember or want to remember? A forest tale from your childhood? A legend your grandmother once told? Let us know in the comments, because the stories you carry are often the ones others have forgotten. And now, close your eyes. Let the waves come. It begins with a turtle. You woke before the sun. The sky was still pale, not quite dawn, just the faintest breath of light brushing the sea. You'd done this 1,000 times, maybe more. The rhythm of it lived in your bones. Rope, oar, net, salt. The sea was your world, vast, steady, and quiet in ways the land never was. But something felt different today. Not wrong, just still, as though the sea itself were holding its breath. You pulled on your sandals, shrugged your fishing pole over your shoulder, and began walking down the narrow path toward the shore. The village behind you was still asleep. Thatched roofs sagged softly under the weight of early mist. No voices, no dogs barking, just the hush of morning. The sand was cool under your feet when you reached it. Your boat waited where you always left it, drawn up beside the rocks, nets bundled neatly inside. But you didn't climb in right away, because just beyond the dune, near the tide pools where crabs scuttled and sea glass washed ashore, you heard laughter, not the warm kind, not the kind that makes your chest rise with joy. This was sharper, uneven, mocking. You stepped closer. There, half hidden by the tall grass, were 4 boys from the village. Their clothes were damp, their hands were sandy, and in the center of their little circle was something moving. A turtle, small, greenish-brown, with a shell just longer than your hand. Its flippers flailed in the air as one of the boys nudged it with the end of a stick. "Flip it again," one boy said. Another laughed, tossing a pebble near its face to make it flinch. The turtle made a small, helpless sound, more breath than voice. Its eyes were wide, afraid. You stepped closer. "Enough." The word came quiet, but sharp. The boys looked up. One of them straightened, another shifted uncomfortably, brushing sand from his sleeve. "He's just a turtle," one muttered. "Not anymore," you said. They hesitated. Then, like smoke caught by wind, they scattered, their laughter fading behind them as they ran toward the village. You bent and lifted the turtle gently into your hands. Its shell was warm from the sun, speckled with flecks of grit. It didn't fight, just blinked up at you, slow and cautious. You carried it to the water's edge. Kneeling in the surf, you held it just above the tide. Salt foam kissed your fingers. The turtle didn't move at first. Then, slowly, like it finally trusted the world again, it stretched out its flippers and slid forward, vanishing into the waves. You watched until the sea smoothed over again. Then you stood, wiped your hands on your robe, and turned back to your boat. The day was gentle, the sea calm, the nets easy to cast. Fish came in modest numbers, enough to sell, enough to share. Time passed slowly, measured only by the sun overhead and the sound of water slapping gently against the boat's side. You didn't think about the turtle again, not yet, but the stillness from earlier hadn't left you. It clung to the air like mist, soft and quiet. By the time you made it back to shore, the sun was beginning to fall. The tide had shifted, and something was waiting. You saw it before you'd even pulled your boat fully onto the sand. A shape, dark, smooth, low in the water. At first you thought it might be driftwood, a log washed in from some distant storm, but then it moved, and your breath caught. It was a turtle, much larger than the one from that morning, nearly as tall as a man, with a shell patterned like stone. It lifted its head and looked directly at you. Then it spoke. "You saved my kin." The voice was strange, soft and deep, like sound carried through ocean water. It wasn't made by lips, and yet you heard it clearly. "The princess of the sea sends her thanks. She wishes to see you." You didn't speak. Part of you wanted to turn, to step back toward the village, toward everything you understood. But another part, the quiet part, the old part, the part of you that had always watched the horizon and wondered, that part answered, "I'll come." The turtle dipped its head in reply. "Climb onto my back. Hold tightly. Do not let go." You obeyed. Its shell was cool, slick like river stone, but not slippery. You settled onto it, your hands gripping gently near the edge of its shoulders. Then it dove. The world tilted. For a heartbeat, you couldn't breathe. But then the water opened for you. Not like drowning, not like falling, like floating between moments. The surface faded above you, light becoming color, color becoming blue, blue becoming shadow. And then light again, but not from the sun, from beneath. The sea lit from below, pale and green gold, like moonlight spilled across glass. The turtle moved swiftly but smoothly, weaving between currents that never touched you. And then, in the distance, you saw it. A palace, built not of stone, but coral and pearl, ivory and kelp. It shimmered in soft spirals, archways blooming like sea flowers, towers shaped like shells, windows glowing with strange, drowsy light. The closer you came, the quieter the world felt. Not silent, just hushed, like the sea itself was listening. The turtle slowed, then stopped beside the palace gates. And from within, she stepped forward. She wore robes of flowing white, not cloth, but woven water, it seemed. Her hair drifted around her like seagrass. Her face was gentle, ageless, not human, not quite, but close enough to comfort. She looked at you with eyes like pearl and sky. "Welcome, Urashima Taro," she said, though you had not given her your name. "You are kind and brave, and you are now a guest of Ryugujo, the palace beneath the sea." She extended a hand, and somehow you knew to take it. You stepped from the turtle's back. Your feet touched no stone, just sand, soft as ash, warm as sleep. The palace opened around you, filled with music, scentless flowers that glowed, walls that pulsed faintly with the rhythm of the tide. No fear touched you, only wonder, only calm, only the strange feeling that you were moving deeper into a dream you'd forgotten you once had. And ahead of you, the princess walked. She did not look back, but her hand remained outstretched. You followed, and the sea closed gently behind. The moment you passed through the gates of Ryugujo, the sea forgot you. The pressure vanished. The cold dissolved. Your ears no longer throbbed with depth. It was as if the water had stepped aside, made room for you. The halls did not echo. They pulsed. Walls curved inward like the inside of a conch shell. Light came from nowhere, and yet everything glowed. Pearlescent beams rippled across the coral, drifting like mist through the water, even though no current stirred. There were no windows, no doors, only open spaces that led to more open spaces, each one impossibly vast. You walked beside Princess Otohime in silence. She did not speak again, but she did not let go of your hand. It was not cold, not warm, just steady, like a tide that had known you long before this life. You passed koi with fins like silk, suspended mid-air as if swimming through sleep. Anemones curled toward you as you passed, not with fear, but reverence. Tiny silver fish darted across the ceiling like fireflies, blinking in and out of sight. Everything shimmered, but nothing sparkled. Nothing tried to impress. The palace did not announce itself. It simply existed, like it had always been here, waiting. In a chamber shaped like a spiraled pearl, you were given rest. No bed, but a smooth place to lie, lined with moss-soft seaweed and flecked with crushed shell. No walls, only floating curtains made from sea foam, and thread so fine it disappeared when you blinked. You laid down. You did not ask how long you'd stay. You did not ask where this place truly was. You did not ask why the princess knew your name. You simply closed your eyes and slept. When you woke, there was music, not loud, not even rhythmic. It was like listening to the memory of a song, one played on instruments long vanished. You stood. The light had changed slightly, dimmer, warmer, as if the palace could feel your waking. Outside your chamber, the princess was waiting. She said nothing, but her smile deepened. She turned and began walking, and you followed without question. You passed through rooms made of fossil, glass, living coral. One had mirrors, dozens of them, that didn't reflect your body but your thoughts. You saw yourself as a child in one, as an old man in another. In a third, you saw nothing at all, and that somehow felt truer than either. In the next chamber, jellyfish floated in the air like paper lanterns. They moved slowly, trailing soft light behind them, illuminating words etched into the walls. You couldn't read the script, but you understood the feeling behind it. Memory, regret, joy. Each word was an echo. Each echo was a choice. And still, no one spoke. Later, maybe minutes, maybe days, you ate. You cannot remember the taste, but you remember the silence. It wasn't empty. It was sacred. The food was unlike anything from the surface. Soft, glowing things that dissolved when they touched your tongue. Warm petals that pulsed with sweetness. A cup of water that wasn't water, but something colder and clearer, that made your thoughts stretch farther than your body. The princess sat across from you. She watched, not in judgment, not in hunger, just watched. She was the kind of quiet that made you feel seen. Eventually, you began to speak, not all at once, just small things, where you came from, the sound of wind through pine trees, the way the shorebirds wheeled above the cliffs in early autumn. She listened. Sometimes her lips curved in a faint smile. Sometimes she closed her eyes. Sometimes she asked a single question, and you would answer without knowing why you knew the answer. You lived like that, in waking dreams. The palace never changed, and yet it was never the same twice. You stopped wondering how deep you were. You stopped wondering whether this was magic. You stopped wondering whether you should be afraid. There was no need for questions anymore. There was only the quiet, the music, the slow, endless peace of it. Once you asked her what day it was. She tilted her head. There are no days here. You nodded. Somehow you had already known. Once you asked her where the music came from. She said, from the space between the waves. And once, though you hadn't meant to speak aloud, you asked, why me? The question floated in the air, heavier than you expected. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she turned to you, not smiling, not sad. Because you stopped. You didn't understand. Not fully. But again, part of you did. You learned the way the palace breathed. You learned the rhythm of silence. You learned to sleep deeply and wake slowly and not count the hours between. And with each cycle, each soft loop of time, your thoughts grew slower, not dull, just still, like driftwood that no longer remembers the tree. You thought once or twice of the village, your boat, the nets, the shore where you had knelt in the surf, the little turtle blinking in your hand. You wondered what became of the boys. You wondered whether your mother's shrine still stood behind the house. You wondered whether the house itself was still there. But the thoughts came lightly. They touched you like wind on the surface of water, never enough to disturb the depths. And besides, the palace was very beautiful. The princess never aged. Neither did you, not in any way you could feel. But something inside you shifted, not sadness, not quite. More like a quiet breath that never fully exhaled. A pause, held just a little too long. You found yourself looking at your hands sometimes, at your reflection in the shell-polished walls, not searching for changes, but wondering if they would still be yours in 100 more dreams. You never asked to leave, but one day, you woke with something heavy behind your ribs. A single, weightless thought. I wonder if anyone remembers me. The palace waited. The music softened. The light around the halls dimmed ever so slightly. Not dark, but deeper, like a tide beginning to pull away from the shore. And the princess was already standing by the gates, as though she had been waiting for the question to take root in you. Her hands were folded. When you approached, she met your eyes. "You may go," she said. You blinked. The word felt distant, unreal. Go? If your heart remembers something, she said, then perhaps it is time. She lifted her hand. In it, a small, lacquered box, red, tied with silver cord, light as breath. Take this with you, but do not open it. Not ever. You nodded. Though something in you trembled, you nodded. She placed the box in your hand. It was warm. The same turtle was waiting. You climbed on, held the box tightly to your chest, and began to rise. The sea opened for you again. Not with song, not with ceremony, just silence. The turtle's back was steady beneath you, its shell cool against your palms. You held the red box gently, close to your chest, cradling it as though it breathed. You didn't ask how long the journey would take. You didn't speak at all. You only listened. There were no fish now, no glowing jellies, no music following you from below, just stillness, as if the water itself was pausing to watch you leave. The surface grew brighter, not all at once, but in slow pulses. Light filtered down in long, shimmering strands, like golden hair through a window. And then, with a final rise, the turtle broke through. You followed. You blinked. And the world had changed. The sky was blue, the clouds soft. The breeze carried the scent of pine, just like it always had. But the silence wasn't right. It wasn't the silence of dawn or solitude. It was the silence of something missing, something that had once been loud. The beach was still there, but not the way you remembered. The rocks were different, sharper in some places, gone in others. Sand piled strangely along the cliffs, as if the tide had been reshaped. The boat you had tied up was gone. Of course it was, but there wasn't even a post anymore, just an empty shoreline. You stepped onto the sand. It felt familiar, but not right. You walked slowly, the box tucked under your arm. Your legs moved easily, too easily, as though your body remembered this world better than your mind did. But the world no longer remembered you. The path to the village was still there, faint and overgrown, but there. Grass grew wild along the edges. The stones beneath your feet had shifted. Some were cracked, some sunk. Trees leaned differently. The wind moved like a stranger. You followed the bend that once led to your door and found a house, but not yours. The roof was too steep, the beams too wide. The window you had once carved your name beneath, gone. In its place, a wooden plaque you could not read, written in a language close to yours, but not quite. A woman stepped out. She looked young and old. Her eyes passed over you like wind through reeds. She did not pause, did not call out. She simply picked up a basket and vanished down the hill. You turned. The shrine where your father's ashes had been kept, gone, replaced by a smooth stone pillar etched with unfamiliar characters. A rope of white paper charms circled its base. You reached out, touched it, cold, not new, but not ancient either. You turned again and walked. Other homes lined the hill, none that you knew. Some were thatched, others tiled. A few made from wood too pale to have come from this land. No one called your name. No dogs barked. Even the wind seemed to ignore you. You passed a group of children. They didn't stare, didn't whisper. They barely saw you. One of them looked at your clothes, the fabric still fresh, unmarred by sea or soil, and blinked, curious for a moment, then turned away. At the edge of the village, an old man sat on a stool, carving something from wood. You approached him slowly. He didn't look up. You cleared your throat. He glanced sideways, and in your language, your old worn tongue, he said softly, "From the sea, are you?" You nodded. He frowned, not in suspicion, in thought. "That story's older than me," he said. "Older than my grandfather's bones. Man saved a turtle, vanished into the ocean, never came back. Until now," you said. Your voice cracked. He looked at you more carefully then, not quite surprised, not quite afraid. "Your name?" "Urashima Taro." He let the knife in his hand rest in his lap. "You're not a ghost," he said. "No, but you're not right either." You didn't answer. The red box in your hand grew heavier. "They tell the story still," the old man said, "but only in temples. When the fishermen are feeling lucky, most think it's just a fable." He leaned forward. "What's in the box?" "I don't know," you said. "Why haven't you opened it?" "She told me not to." He nodded. Not mockingly, not with disbelief, just quiet understanding. "Then maybe don't." He returned to carving and didn't look up again. You sat for a while beneath a cypress tree. The wind moved the branches overhead. The air was cooler than you remembered. Everything was, even your thoughts. You tried to recall the princess's voice, the palace, the music that hummed between walls. You tried to remember the exact moment you first stepped into the sea, but your memories were soft now, blurry, like stones left too long in tide pools. The edges smoothed, the details washed away. Only the feeling remained, that you had once been somewhere beautiful, that something inside you had been touched by a world no one else remembered, that you were not quite of this place anymore, and that maybe you never had been. You stood again. No one called your name. You walked to the edge of the shore, where the foam still kissed the sand. You knelt there, placed the box on your lap. It was warm, still warm, as if it had been waiting. You did not open it. Not yet. Instead, you watched the tide move in and out, the way it always had, the way it always would. And the sound of the waves, the hush, the pull, the return, felt like the last part of a dream you hadn't finished. You closed your eyes, and the sea went quiet again. You sat at the edge of the sea for a long time. The sand cooled beneath you. The tide pulled farther out, exposing wet stone and delicate shells. In the distance, gulls wheeled over the water, but their cries sounded fainter than you remembered. The box sat in your lap. You hadn't moved since placing it there. Your fingers traced its shape, lacquered red, smooth, warm to the touch. There was no lock, no seal, just a ribbon of silver cord tied in a bow so precise it seemed woven by breath. It pulsed faintly in your hands, like something sleeping. Not alive, not in any way the body knows, but present, waiting. The villagers hadn't followed you. The old man hadn't come to see if you were still there. No one asked your name again. Time was moving. The world had found its rhythm again. But you still sat in the quiet space between seconds. You looked out over the sea. You tried to picture the coral towers, the glowing halls, the koi that swam through air like birds, Otohimi's voice. But the images slipped through your grasp like foam through fingers. You remembered the feeling of peace. You remembered the sound of your own breath in a place that had no air. You remembered holding her hand, but her face, you could no longer see her face, not clearly. You opened your mouth and spoke her name, Otohime, software, just enough to stir the air. But the sea didn't stir in return, only silence. You looked down again at the box. You had never asked what was inside. You hadn't needed to, because part of you had always known. It was time. That was what she had given you. Not more of it, not less. She had simply contained it, paused it, held it at bay so you could live in that impossible stillness, a borrowed peace outside the reach of seasons and clocks. But now the world remembered you, and time had come looking. You let your fingers slide beneath the cord. You didn't pull, you didn't rush, you just loosened it. The knot gave easily. The ribbon slithered down, coiling softly in your lap. The lid was light. When you lifted it, slowly, reverently, you expected something bright, something loud, a sound, a flash, a wind, but there was nothing. No light, no smoke, no voice, only air, cool, dry. And then, warmth. It began in your chest, a quiet bloom of heat, like sun on old wood. Then your hands. They began to ache, not sharply, but deeply, like roots cracking through stone. Your spine folded in slightly. Your shoulders drew inward. You looked down and saw your skin, once smooth, now thin and spotted. Your fingers trembled. The warmth moved faster now. Your breath grew shorter. Your vision dimmed at the edges. Not pain, not fear, just change. Like the tide rising back over a dry beach. Like a wave that had always been meant to reach you. Your hair whitened. Your knees stiffened. Your heartbeat slowed. Your lungs sighed once, twice, and then rested. And through it all, the box in your lap did not move. It remained warm, steady, a final gift, a reminder that nothing is held forever. When you looked at your hands again, they were old, not decayed, not ruined, just tired, used, lived. You leaned back slightly, resting your spine against a driftwood log bleached smooth by the sea. The wind moved over your face. The sea shimmered in the distance. The children's voices had faded entirely. The village had drawn in its breath and exhaled you. There was no one left who remembered your name. But somehow, you felt no sorrow, only stillness. You closed your eyes and remembered the feeling of floating, not through water, but through time, through a story that had always been waiting for you. You had left kindness on the shore, and the sea had returned it for a while. You never saw the palace again, not in dream, not in vision, but some part of you, the deepest, slowest part, still hummed with its music. And when the wind came in off the tide, you heard her voice, not calling, not asking you to return, just saying, "Thank you." When they found your body, years later, it was seated peacefully at the edge of the tide. The box rested beside you, open, empty. The silver ribbon fluttered in the breeze. Some said you were a spirit. Some said a god. Some said a fisherman who had lost his way. But none of them knew. None of them remembered. Only the sea did. And it said nothing at all. Time, when it finally returned to you, did not come with cruelty. It didn't take vengeance for being forgotten. It simply resumed what it had been doing all along, turning. And now, it turns still. The sea moves in and out, brushing the same shore where your story ended. The tide does not speak your name, but the wind seems to pause just slightly when it passes that stretch of sand. And once in a while, not often, but just enough, someone hears the story again. They do not always remember the details. Sometimes it's a child who hears the name first. Urashima Taro, whispered by a teacher, or a shrine keeper, or an aging grandmother with a faraway look in her eye. Sometimes the turtle is a dragon. Sometimes the princess wears robes of starlight instead of sea foam. Sometimes the box is said to contain the breath of the gods, or the sorrow of the waves. The story shifts, fades, frays, but it survives. Because stories, like tides, always find their way back. And you drift now, not through ocean currents, but through memory. You are not lost. You are simply no longer held, no longer bound by the rhythm of breath and the pull of seasons. You are the pause in a lullaby, the hush between two waves, the shape of silence when someone says, "Once upon a time," somewhere, someone still walks the shoreline you once stood upon. They may not know your name, but they feel something, a stillness in the breeze, a shimmer in the tide, a warmth in their chest they cannot explain. They stop, look out across the water, and for a moment they imagine, what if a turtle came from the sea? What if it spoke? What if there was a palace beneath the waves, where time could be held in a box and sorrow forgotten for a little while? What if there was a place where everything paused, and only kindness mattered? They won't say it aloud. They might not even know they're thinking it. But the story is there, inside them, and in that quiet wondering, you return. There is no shrine to you, no stone bearing your name, no godhood carved in your likeness. But that's not what stories need to survive. They need ears, and quiet, and a single soul willing to believe, even briefly, that the impossible once reached the shore. Some say you were a warning, that paradise always has a price, that curiosity leads to ruin, that humans were never meant to taste eternity. Others say you were blessed, that you lived beyond time, that you saw something no one else could, that to lose the world is a small thing if you gained peace in return. But most simply say, he saved a turtle, he was kind, and the sea remembered. Your story is not grand, it is not filled with war or heroism or fire from the heavens. It is soft, brief, like breath caught in sea foam, and because of that, it remains, tucked gently into the folds of folklore. You do not speak anymore, but in the quiet hours, when someone closes their eyes and listens to the hush of a story being told, they hear something, a second heartbeat beneath the waves, a shimmer in the rhythm of the words. That is you, still here, still drifting. Some say the box was a curse, that Otohime betrayed you, that the palace was a trap, a trick, a dream meant to distract you from life. But you know better. The box was a gift, not to keep time from you, but to let you forget it, just long enough to rest, to be at peace, to feel weightless, to be kind without fear of consequence or consequence without weight. You lived 1,000 years in a moment, and then you let go. And perhaps, just perhaps, that is the quiet promise of every story, that one day, when you're no longer clinging to the past or chasing the future, you'll find yourself cradling a simple box, and in it, not gold, not glory, just time, returned to you, like a wave washing back what was left on the shore. Somewhere out there, a child tosses a stone into the sea, a fisherman ties up his boat before the storm, a mother hums a lullaby older than memory, and though none of them say your name, they carry your story, even now, even here, even in the quiet before sleep. And maybe, tonight, they'll dream of a turtle and follow it into the sea. You've journeyed far tonight, not across mountains or battlefields, but through memory and myth and the quiet rhythm of the sea. You've walked the shoreline where time forgets its name. You've listened to a story that drifted through centuries, soft as foam, patient as tides. Maybe now, you feel that stillness too, the kind that sits just beneath your breath, the kind that asks nothing and gives everything, the kind that carries you gently toward rest. So close your eyes. Let go of the day. Let the sound of the waves in your mind smooth into silence. And if you dream, maybe you'll follow a turtle into the sea, and maybe, just maybe, she'll be waiting. Good night, traveler. Sleep well. We'll meet again in the next story.